Money is a great tool, but it's actively harmful given to the wrong child. But then another child, you're just holding them back. I know a lot of people who are super successful, but they're stuck working kind of dead-end jobs because they have to support themselves, and their parents are rich. And if they would just help them a little bit, they could have benefited the whole world so much more.
Meet Dustin Burnham, Florida man and anesthetist. He joins me to discuss how to operate in a high-performance environment while still leading your wife and children well.
And I see a lot of people in medicine who are very bad at being a husband, being a father. It's a completely different skill set. They give up. I'm already putting everything into saving people's lives, right? I'm a good person, and then I go home and I get no respect. I'm just going to stay at work. I don't want to be around this disrespectful environment.
We cover managing the pressures of family and career, how to build leadership skills, and what high-performing men battle with in their home life, and how to fix it.
And help her understand that there is leadership happening and that you have a good plan. Because if you acquiesce on everything, you have no leg to stand on with leadership. You should always listen to your wife. You should always take what she says into account. But one of the worst things you can do as a man is exactly what your wife wants you to do.
Nothing you work for matters unless you're able to build a strong family. And you can have fun along the way, just like Dustin and I did in this installment of the Dynastis podcast.
And then when you wake up to heat and gentle vibration instead of
I didn't know it
an
went
audio
that far.
alarm.
Okay.
It's really nice.
Isn't that what a wife's for?
Right, yeah. So I like to think of anesthesia as the night's watch of medicine. Our job is to make sure that the patient stays safe, stays comfortable, and the surgeon's job is just to fix the patient. So they're not necessarily worried about what the blood pressure is, how they're doing, if their eyes, there's too much pressure on them. And it's our job to always push back and say, patient's not doing that well right now. We need to fix this before you can continue. I know it's not efficient. You got 9 surgeries to get done today. We're going to have to slow things down a little bit though. And so it's boring and it's not exciting at all. There are many parts of my job that are very exciting and terrifying when a patient's not doing well, but most of it thankfully is pretty steady, can be very boring. And so that process of watching and waiting and being a part of that whole surgical theater, that is a really key element to being successful. And so if you're the kind of person who needs to be constantly creating and doing, it's not a great position for you because the cadence is not on us. We are the support that makes sure that everything goes well. We are the catalyst. We're not the actual doer in that sense. So that's kind of the key element for me is being able to handle those boring moments to make sure that everything goes well for the patient.
Wow, okay. The Night Watch. I like that. It's almost sounds like a superhero.
It helps me. It's like an alter ego in a sense. I take on.
Okay, yeah.
I'm no longer just Dustin. I'm now the protector of the operating room, essentially, right? We're like the paramedics and the protectors of the of the surgical theater, and that makes those boring moments a little more special for me and helps me get through those times.
But you said that you've got to kind of push back on people. Do you find that adds a lot of pressure, not only to your, the being in the operating room, but just to your world in general?
It does. And it's made me a much better person. Part of this was growing up with a single mom. She's amazing. She read to me every day. She was as good of a mother as anyone could hope for, but she wasn't a dad, right? So there were a few soft skills that I didn't pick up from her, and I didn't learn until I was older that I was missing those. So leadership is something I really struggle with. I was just talking to a friend about this. I hate asking my wife to do things for me. I would much rather go do it myself. And she hates that because she wants to be led and be told, hey, this is how I can help you. So by taking that away from her and by micromanaging everything myself, it's really not been great for our relationship. So one of the keys for me is to be able to delegate to her. And it's the same with anesthesia. I have to stay in the room the entire time. I can't leave the room. That would not only be unsafe, but illegal. So I have to stay in the room the whole time while the patient is on the table. So if I need a piece of equipment, a special thing for the airway, something breaks and I need a new piece of equipment, I have to lean on my support staff to go do that for me. And I have to ask people to go do those things. So whether I wanted it or not, I got a leadership role. And so in doing this for the past 10 years, I've become a much better leader, and it's allowed me to tell my children what to do. If you can believe it, I actually still feel kind of awkward sometimes telling my children, you need to go do this. I feel a little bit like a tyrant. I would much rather work with them. And, my son's only 6. Of course I should be leading him. He's not going to make the decisions there. but my natural inclination is to allow people. I'm ultra libertarian. Allow people to do what they want. Don't get in the way. And so
Yeah.
it's not a natural thing for me at all to tell people this is what to do. I'm leading you, follow what I'm saying. And so my work has forced me into a role where, wow, if I don't lead and take charge of the situation and push back when a surgeon is doing something unsafe, someone will be harmed. And so that's the ultimate way, I think, for people like myself who are not natural leaders to become leaders is when the patient's life is at stake. I'm not going to let someone get hurt. So I'm going to fight back from my natural uh, push, kind of lean back and let people do what they want, a laissez faire attitude. And I'm forced to step in and become more of a leader.
And what was the moment that made you realize that you lacked that natural inclination towards leadership?
It was talking with my friends on the Present Fathers podcast, George Hayworth, particularly. He has a military background. He's a strong leader. His job now is literally teaching men leadership skills. And so I went through his course and I realized everything that he's teaching is the complete opposite of the way that I behave. and
Right.
and
Okay.
I was naturally seeing the consequences of what I was doing. So I was losing the respect of my wife in many ways because my behavior did not match what I look like in my persona. I'm a highly successful medical professional. I make a ton of money. I'm in amazing shape. I'm 4% body fat. I'm super strong and I'm a complete pushover. It doesn't make any sense, right? Like a man like that, it's not consistent logically across the table. There are all these metrics that I was meeting in terms of what you'd expect of a man who's very successful, confident, but didn't feel comfortable leading. And so as I started to learn, the classic one that George likes to talk about is the shopping cart test. If you are pushing the shopping cart and you say, okay, I'm going to go get the cereal over in aisle three. I would never buy cereal. I'm going to go get the avocados over in aisle three, right? And your wife says, no, you know what? Let's get the bacon first, and then we'll get the avocado. My natural inclination is to say, of course, whatever you want. Why would I push back on that? I'll just do whatever you say. Let's go get the bacon, and then we'll go get the avocado. But the better thing to do, and that what a natural leader does, is to gently push her towards the avocados, like was the original plan, get them, grab the bacon, and help her understand that there is leadership happening and that you have a good plan. And it's so simple. Why does that matter, right? But it absolutely matters because if you acquiesce on everything, you you have no leg to stand on with leadership. And so with important things, then the natural inclination is to always follow your wife as well. And so one of the keys to leadership is to stop following always. You should always listen to your wife. You should always take what she says into account, but you should not always just do exactly what she says. Right. And in many ways, women, without realizing to, it's pardon my expression, it's called a shit test, right? It's basically doing little things to see, is he just going to do whatever I want? And for a decade, that's what I did. I just did whatever my wife wanted, and it was not good for our relationship at all. One of the worst things you can do as a man is exactly what your wife wants you to do, which is a weird thing, right? I mean, it seems so
No,
simple. Oh,
I
my
know,
wife
I
wants me to
know.
do it, do it. You absolutely should not do that. And nobody taught me that. No, if anything, I was taught the opposite, that that's absolutely what you should do. And you'll be rewarded and everyone will be happy. And this is great. And just let her lead. Men aren't natural leaders, right? We don't know what we're talking about. We're Homer Simpsons. We sit on the couch and drink beer. We're incompetent. Do what your competent wife says. And it took someone really showing me that's not a happy way to live your life. And you're doing okay, but you could be doing so much better if you naturally lead.
Do you think that that inclination towards being a yes dare kind of man, do you think that was a byproduct of being raised by a single mother?
It was a byproduct of being raised by my single mother.
Okay.
My mom is highly educated, incredible empath. My best friend, she's an amazing woman. She is a complete doormat, though. She lets people walk on
Okay.
her all the time. And I've begged her for years, Mom, you have to, you know, I we have a funny relationship. So I told my mom, Mom, you got to grow a set of balls, okay? And
Right.
she said, Dustin, I can't. I'm not a man. But so, uh, growing up with that my entire life, I believed that the highest virtue was to serve other people and to do that, I had to always do what they said. and go along with other people and not push back and be as friendly as possible. And that can get you a lot of places to a point. But there's a very strong limitation, especially for a man, when you live that way. And so if I lived with a mom maybe who was a more difficult person, or someone who showed stronger leadership tendencies, I might not have had that. So it's not purely a male female thing, but men are much more likely, as you know, to be a little bit difficult, to push back, to demand, even when a whole room of 10 people says it's one way, they'll say, no, I was taught that's not correct. If you put 20 women in a room, they're going to come to consensus. They are consensus creatures, and that's wonderful. But that's not how men are. We argue, we fight, we disagree on things, and then that's how we get to the right answer. So growing up just as a single child with my mother, my biggest influence in life was someone who did everything she could to agree with other people. And so I naturally took on those tendencies. And now a big part of my later life is unlearning some of those. And I'm still a very agreeable person, but I'm working very hard to be less agreeable and a little bit more of a pain in the ass. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, you said earlier that you could tell that your wife was losing respect for you. What were some of the signs of that? Hey, I know Dustin's been a really fun guest, so I will keep this interruption quick. Just a reminder to like and subscribe. It only takes a sec and helps me bring more world-class guests to you. Check out the topic in the description if you want access to my library of research on building a legacy family. Thanks, and back to the episode. You could tell that your wife was losing respect for you. What were some of the signs of that?
Small things. So when we would have conversations, the I would push back because she would have, I mean, people have it all the time, just a really bad idea. Like what I said made way more sense. And so I would say, no, that doesn't work. Like, let's do it this way. And the natural assumption on her part was starting to become, no, we're just going to do it my way. I'm not really going to listen to you. And so it was hurting not only our relationship, but we were spending too much money on things, making inefficient travel plans. Our budgeting wasn't that great. We have so many resources and things were relatively easy for us, especially before kids, that it didn't really matter. If we wasted a few bucks
Mm.
on an expensive restaurant, if we, threw some money away on a vacation, it wasn't going to affect our long-term plans that much. And then we had kids. And then she had a very difficult pregnancy and everything was on me and I had to lead no matter what. Again, I was put in a forced leadership position and things went really well. We did things my way and we succeeded and it was great. But then it went back to her being healthy again, able to take care of some more things. And it went back to me just kind of doing what I was told. And it was very clear that a lot of these little tests were happening where she would say, okay, I'm going to do some things that don't necessarily make sense. And I would just go along with it. And then she would do other things that really didn't make sense. And I would, just keep following and nothing harmful, nothing self-destructive, but to the point that it was very clear that she did not respect me enough to not, kind of engage in those sorts of behaviors. So especially around the kids, for example, um, we try very hard to be a united front. If my son says, may I have some chocolate? Go ask your mom, go ask your dad. We talk about it. We have that conversation. And there were becoming times where I would say no to something and she would say, no, it's fine. You can go ahead and have it. And I realized that's a huge lack of respect there. If your dad says no, and then your mom goes around him and says, no, it's fine. I realized, okay, we need to discuss this because this is gonna become a problem, pretty quickly.
So, did you end up having to have any difficult conversations around this subject with your wife, and how did you approach them?
We did. The key that I've found is coming at it as an attack and saying what you're doing is wrong. I disagree with you. I don't like that. Is nobody likes that. And in a marriage, it's just not great, right? So what I would do is find the right environment. We're both in a good moment. We have some time to chat, and I'll say, "Hey, open venue here. Let's have a conversation about, what we're happy about, what we're not happy about." And you do kind of the classic compliment sandwich. You made the most amazing dinner tonight. Those chicken thighs were incredible. They were juicy. I absolutely loved it. So good. So thank you for that. And then we'd, talk about some other things. And then I would say, okay, along with that, after dinner, we had the chicken and then it was pretty late at night. And I don't think it makes sense for our son to have chocolate that late. He won't sleep as well. And sure enough, it took him an extra hour to go to bed afterwards. But you said it's fine, even though I'd already said no. And so I want us to get to a point where we don't disagree in front of our children and countermand each other, right? And I'll try not to do that with you. And then she'll make a point and say, oh, well, there was a time that, I said it wasn't okay. And you said, no, it's fine. He's good. And I'll say, that's a great point. And I will do my best not to do that in the future. Let's have those disagreements away from the children and make sure that we're providing united front. And that's how we were kind of able to win together. I haven't always done it that well. I've definitely led it with, you're being rude and defying me and disrespect. I would said that, but and that never goes well, right? That's just immediately,
No,
going to
never.
turn into a fight,
Yeah.
and nobody wins. Yeah. So whenever I have those difficult conversations, I have always, and the only times they've been successful is when I've created the right environment where we can correct each other's behavior and fix those things. Because if the environment isn't right, it's not going to go well.
So how do you create that environment then?
There's a couple of keys to it. One of the keys is a culture of open communication where you're talking throughout the day. So one of the biggest challenges of working in medicine is I might have a 15-hour day. I'll get up at 5 a.m., drive to work until about 7 p.m., drive home. It's 8 p.m. We'll text each other. We might even have a call at some point, but I'm in the operating room all day. I'm not in a position where I can freely call someone very often. So we haven't spoken all day. We have two very rambunctious, wonderful kids that are very high. It's a lot of emotional intensity. So,
Hmm.
they've been challenging her all day, and then I come home and we haven't talked all day, and I say, "Hey, we need to change this thing." That's not the right environment for it at all, right? So I always make sure to choose a day that I'm home and that I wasn't working, and that we've had some lunch together. Maybe I've done something nice. I've asked her to do some things, and we feel like we're simpatico and we're really working together. Now at that point, now there's an open, trusting environment for us to tackle things. The other thing that really helps, my wife, like me, is a huge nerd. When we met, she was on the fifth book of the Game of Thrones series. I think Dance
Okay,
with
right.
Dragons, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, this is gonna go well. This is my kind of girl. I was very excited about that, and she's that's one of the big things we bond over is nerdy books and all that kind of stuff. I love it. So we she's big on homework, and so I will literally, I tried it digitally, or I tried like sending her little suggestions. Didn't work as well. So now what I literally do is I print out a worksheet, and Nano Banana is incredible for that. So basically just say, what do you want the worksheet to go over? What are the concepts we need to address? And make it artsy fartsy and cool, and add a dragon. Why not? Right. And then so, you create these really artistic worksheets that say, and then the other thing is I always start with something I need to work on, right? It's never just, you're wrong, I'm the man, you're the woman, and I'm going to tell you what to do. I don't think that's ever worked in the history of, American society, or I'm sure it doesn't work in New Zealand either. So, it has to be something where I lead with some vulnerability and say, you know, this is an area where I really have not held up my end of the bargain. And here are the changes that I want to make sure that I'm going to be a better husband. Um, that being said, what do you think you could do? Right. So instead of me saying you need to change this, open her up. And a lot of times she'll notice that the behavior is an issue, and then she'll actually lead with it. And it's much easier to get someone to change their behavior when they realize it's something they need to change themselves. And it was her idea to bring it up. So creating those worksheets and having something tactile to work on together, it's like a fun project, right? It's like we're playing a board game, the board game of marriage improvement. Right, and it works really well for us. So it's all about having that structure. For me, is really key.
It sounds like you put a lot of effort into, well, everything in general, but especially your marriage. Do you find that in your profession, or maybe in high achieving men in general, that it's quite common for them to neglect their marriage?
I hate to see it. It's incredibly common because high achieving men, especially in the surgical theater, everything is an orchestra. They're literally a conductor putting everything together. There's a team of 12 to 15 people that follow what they do. It's incredibly satisfying. You can see the dopamine, just like firing. And these guys are increasingly, it's women. I would say over half the surgeons out of our hospital are
Oh, wow,
female.
okay.
That's an interesting, we could talk about that more, how
Yeah.
men are really struggling with, law, medicine, all that kind of stuff. And women have just, skyrocketed into, I think 60, 70% of doctors graduating now are female, at
Wow,
least in
okay.
America. Yeah, which it used to be 80% male. So it's just been a complete, reverse there.
Hmm.
But so I would imagine that because the women now in this situation, they struggle with the same things. They go home, their children don't listen to them, their husband or their wife ignores them, because they know them from a personal setting, but they don't know them in that professional setting where they're incredibly competent. So that's something I try very hard to do, is exude that competence and remind my wife that I'm very good at things that I do. Because I think for a long time what I did was I sequestered that. So in medicine I was great, I was successful, I'd go work out, I was successful, I doing well with social media, writing these things, talking to incredible men like yourself, leveling up in that regard. And then I wasn't putting that same level of confidence and effort at home. I felt a little bit lost. Like, all these people I work with respect me and they're nice to me, and then I'm not getting that at home. What is going on here? Why isn't this working? And so I think what happens, with a lot of my coworkers who eventually do get divorced, or they give up. They say, this is too hard. I'm already putting everything 80 hours a week into saving people's lives, right? I'm a good person. And then I go home and I get no respect. I'm just going to stay at work and work more. This is where I'm good. I don't want to be around this chaotic, disrespectful environment. Right. And so it's very hard to be good at everything. Right. I mean, Isaac Newton lost all his money in the South Sea bubble, right? He was terrible at finance and economics. So, everyone's bad at something. And I see a lot of people in medicine who are very bad at being a husband, being a father. It's a completely different skill set. And what is the term for someone who is good at one thing, so they think they're good at everything? It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You familiar with this?
Yes, yes, yes.
So Dunning-Kruger is where I'm an amazing podcaster, right? And so I think that because I'm good at that, I'm also going to be a great public speaker, right? They're kind of the same thing. They're not the same thing at all. You put yourself in front of 1,000 people on a stage, that's a completely different experience than
Mm-hmm.
hanging out with your buddies podcasting, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Dunning-Kruger, I think I'm really good at both, and I'm actually not so great. And so um, I think you end up with a lot of people in medicine with that same kind of situation. A lot of doctors lose their money, just like Isaac Newton did, investing. Because I'm a brilliant surgeon, I'm also going to be able to beat the market, right? It's so easy. I'm just going to buy the best stocks, and then they end up going broke, and they have to keep working more and more, and then maybe they're divorced, so their paychecks going to another woman, and then before you know it, I know a bunch of guys in their mid 70s and 80s who are still doing surgery. Why are you still here? Partly they love it, right? And it's just something they enjoy doing, but partly they have to. They can't afford it,
Mm.
right? So that's something I see over and over, is just how hard it is to devote so much time and effort to your work, and then find a way to also save something for your home environment. So I would argue most people in medicine would benefit from giving 10% less to work, to find a way to get that energy and devote it to being a better father and a better husband.
Well, you hear a lot of people talk about the work-life balance thing, but a lot of the times, especially when you hear it from successful entrepreneurs or successful professionals, they've gone through that period of their lives where they have worked a lot and they're able to create a certain lifestyle with the resources that they've put together. So for doctors, obviously with their salary, they're able to establish a decent lifestyle for themselves. Or with entrepreneurs, they establish the business, and then the business can maybe not run entirely without them, but there's elements of it that can. Do you think that there has to be a time in every man's life specifically, where they do have to go all in on something, whether it's their career or study or a business, and that balance can only really be achieved later?
There are seasons of life, as you said. And if you don't have unbalance and intensity, you're probably not going to have a remarkable, very successful life. Because if you work the bare minimum, if you put in 30 hours of work, you're never quite going to achieve that level of mastery that you need. So I don't think that necessarily means it needs to happen before children. That certainly made it easier. I don't know if I would have made it through my anesthesia training if I had children, but I have coworkers that did it, and they made it work. They also had family to lean on, and they weren't parenting very much during that time, right? So I
Right.
have the
Yeah.
luxury now of I've set up a schedule where I'm able to devote a lot of time to my children. And that was one of the major decisions that I made. Was one, I moved locations to be closer to my family, and two, I chose a schedule. I work very long days, but I also have a lot of days off where I'm completely devoted to my children. I'm not on call at that point. Nothing from work can come in and take me away from that activity. I just started a chess club with my son. So uh, I get to volunteer and be the dad. And what's crazy is none of the other volunteers even know how to play. I was really surprised. All these parents came in. They don't even know what a
Okay.
knight or a rook does. And I'm going, okay, well,
Wow.
let me show you.
Okay.
This is
Huh.
castling. And the kids are like, whoa, you can jump the rook
The-
over the king. And I was like, yeah, that's, and so that is a really special thing to me to be able to volunteer to do the classic American pastime of baseball, right? My son's really into that right now. And so nothing from work can take that away. That's protected time where I know that I'm spending that time with my children, teaching them, helping them grow. And no amount of money that I can give them when I die will ever replace that, right? Money is a great tool, but it's actively harmful given to the wrong child. I think you're actually better off if
mhm.
a child really needs to mature and grow up a little more to not give them money. But then another child, you're just holding them back. I know a lot of people who are super successful, but they're stuck working kind of dead end jobs because they have to support themselves and their parents are rich. And if they would just help them a little bit, help them get a house, put them in a situation, they could have benefited the whole world so much more. So you really have to know your child and you have to put the work in to know, where that wealth should go. But for me, the ultimate wealth that I can pass on to my son, number one is going to be emotional regulation. I see so many dysregulated children, especially in America, who throw tantrums. These are 8 and 10, 12-year olds who have just incredible anxiety. They're very unhappy children and a few little tweaks, a little more time with dad, and I know that that could be ameliorated significantly. And so that's something I'm very, very intentional with my son is working on emotional regulation. And I know that the effort that I'm putting in has made a huge difference because he's naturally a little bit of an anxious guy and he's very hard on himself. And I'm giving him the tools to work with that. He knows how to box breathe. He loves it. And he even advises me when I'm stressed and I'm cursing at people in traffic.
Wow.
He says, Dad, 4 seconds. You can hear him in the back, Dad, 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold. And I'm dying laughing at this point, right? Because my son's giving me yoga instruction for the back because I'm so stressed. But he's gotten to the point that not only can he regulate himself, but he's knowing when I need help and then he's helping me. That's a crazy situation to be in, right? So
Yeah. That's
he's
remarkable.
learned a lot and I've been the reason that he has that. So I think I truly have work-life balance right now, but I'm also a 43-year-old man who spent 10 years of his life in an unbalanced position, fighting, clawing, scraping through student loans and the most competitive process imaginable to set myself up for that
hmm
kind of situation. So there are seasons in a man's life, and I absolutely expect to be in another unbalanced season at some point. Maybe after my kids leave the nest, then I'll be in another situation entirely where I may look at a second career, volunteer heavily, go into politics, who knows, right? But it'll be something where I will once again throw myself bodily into some new challenge because I desperately need that. Every, 5 or 10 years, I need to reinvent myself. I need a new challenge. I cannot rest on my laurels. And so my 20s were all about fitness. My 30s were all about academics. And now my 40s are all about family and being the best possible father that I can.
And it sounds like you're doing a good job of it, Dustin. You mentioned there that you're on call sometimes. So how do you manage to balance that? Like, I obviously can't go too far from home or from a vehicle with people. So how
Yeah.
do you balance a schedule that becomes unpredictable like that?
Yes, very hard. So it is something I struggled with quite a bit when I was my previous job. I was on call all hours of the night, very erratic. I might have to work at 2 in the morning. If there was a C-section happening, middle of the night, I would have to get out of bed, drive, and go. And that was a real burden on my wife. It was really tough. So I've taken a job now where I take a total of 24 hours of call per month, which is very manageable. It's
Okay.
two 12-hour shifts during the day. During those times, I treat it like an athletic event. It's like I'm running a marathon those 2 days, and I help as much as I can during those times. But it's also understood that I may have to leave at a moment's notice. That's just how call works. You'll be called, and then you need to be here within a pretty short window of time. Get to the hospital, put your scrubs on, game time, be ready. Right. So I can't be at a baseball game or have the kids by myself or that kind of thing like I would normally do. And so I do lean on my wife or my mom or my wife's family at that point, to make sure that they're able to take care of the kids on their own, just like it is for work, right? When I'm gone to
hmm
work, I am gone to work. I don't work from home. I can't help it all. I am completely, I've flown the coop, which is some. it makes me jealous of my friends who are able to either work from home or who have a home business, because if an emergency happens, if something bad happens to my family, I'm away and I can leave, with some sort of window, but I don't have the ability to protect my family at all times. And as a natural protector, that's not the best feeling in the world at all. I have to trust that
Hmm.
I've put them in a great environment, that I'm in the safest possible neighborhood for them, that I have people that I trust, that are always taking care of them. So a big part of your job as a dad that's really hard is you can't always protect your children. At some point, it's their job to leave the nest, right? So you have to give them the skills to make sure that they will be safe and that they'll take care of themselves. And that's a really interesting mindset shift from I'm going to protect everyone and make sure everyone is safe to I'm going to give them the skills to make sure that they know how to stay safe themselves. And I think a lot of dads,
Mm.
unfortunately, are a little overprotective, and their 30-year-old son is playing World of Warcraft in the basement. And that kid is really safe, right? There's
Hmm.
no risk of a girl whisking him away.
Yeah.
You know, he's hanging out in the
Yeah.
basement. He's happy. Nothing's going to happen to him, good or bad. And so that's an interesting shift from protector and provider to mentor, and I haven't gotten there yet. My kids are still young, but
Hmm.
I'm already thinking about what skills they need to develop. And so one of them, we have scouts in America where you learn about camping and um, hiking and engineering and all these skills. And so my son started scouts this year, and we went camping, and the temperature was what is 27 Fahrenheit? I think that's like -3 Celsius. Yeah, it
I
was
don't
below
know.
freezing,
Cold.
which yeah, it was very cold. So for a Florida boy to be in below freezing temperatures, we were both struggling. We're in a tent, not very warm, and
Yeah.
just like huddled up and doing our best. And so it was this great formative experience. My son absolutely loved it. It was very uncomfortable. I'd say
Hmm.
but we both significantly suffered, from the cold, from the challenges, and it made him a better person. There were literally some of the kids next to us were crying at night at 2 a.m. because it was so cold. It was
Really?
a tough
Wow.
night.
Okay.
I think there was a lot of temptation to just leave and just give it up. But so we earned what's called frost points. That's a part of your scouting, is if you stay in below zero temperatures for a certain amount of time, you earn these points towards, like, you were a tough scout essentially, as you went through the
Hmm.
process. So it was a really neat thing. And so those are the kinds of skills that I didn't necessarily develop as a boy, that I want to one develop on my own. It's never too late to learn this stuff, right? And I feel like a complete beginner hanging out with guys who've been doing this their entire life. They're hunters, they're outdoorsmen, and I'm not. And so I'll ask these guys, this is not my natural wheelhouse at all. Do you mind helping? And that's uncomfortable, right? To admit to these
Hmm.
guys, I am not, this is not my world at all. But I have enough, self-respect and confidence to know I've got my area where I'm successful. These guys are better than me. I'm just going to ask. And, that's how we all get better. And so my son learns that way. I learn that way. He learns how to handle an uncomfortable situation. He could see I'm a little uncomfortable admitting weakness to another man, strong
Yeah.
bearded guy setting
Yeah.
up the tent, no problem. And I'm putting the poles through and they're all falling apart and it's not working. And, I'll say, hey, it's getting dark. I need some help here. Can one of you guys help me out with this? And then my son sees me humble myself and admit weakness. And that's sometimes what you have to do, to get help. And so it's so many beneficial things that you get by putting yourself out there and learning these skills. So it's not a balance at all. It's very much me leaning on other people. And one of the themes of my
Hmm.
life is I'm a very interdependent person. I'm not an island at all. I'm very good at certain things and I'm very, very bad at other things. And I would not do well alone on an island by myself. I absolutely thrive in an environment where I can provide my incredibly unique skills to other people, but then I can also ask for their skills in return. We all live a better life because of that.
That's really interesting because that's something that I battle with. Like I can't, I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but I am a bit of an island. Like I like to do everything myself and develop a wide variety of skills. And obviously, without somebody else to lean on to learn those from, you can make a lot of mistakes, which I have done, and some of them have been quite expensive. So it's it's interesting to hear that from a different perspective, where you're able to kind of humble yourself and ask for that support when you need it. Yeah, quite inspiring actually. Now, one of the things you said there was, you kind of are concerned with the inability, not inability, but lack of ability, let's say, to keep your family safe because of the demands of your job. Like if you're in the operating room, you can't take a call or anything like that. You are unaware of the situation your family's in. And for me, it's like, because I do work from home. I'm at home right now. I can hear my kids outside. Unfortunately, I got a good enough mic, I won't pick it up. But yeah, but that's one thing that I think perhaps I took for granted a bit. And I don't appreciate the fact that I am here to protect my family, because there have been times where, you know, I have there have been not necessarily dangerous situations. She's in a very safe country, but like there's been a dog that's come into the property from the neighbor's place, and while they're friendly, they're a little too friendly, and they can knock my son over. So if I hear that dog coming, then I'm able to kind of step out there and be like, okay, you got to go back home now, kind of thing. So yeah, I guess I kind of take that for granted a little bit. But what are some things that you think that most men take for granted, in their professional careers or in the situation they find themselves in as a result?
I think a lot of men don't understand how much risk there is in the system and how
Okay.
no day is given. So I have a very secure job. I'm pretty confident that I will continue to have my job for the next 10, 20 years, however long I want it. But I also understand that that's not automatic, and that when you work very hard to have work, you won't always get a raise the next year. You won't always have that job, even if you work very hard and your boss likes you and all that. There's always some risk that that may not happen, right? And so lifestyle creep is so real with so many people that I know, especially in medicine, because it is such a secure position. If you're a nurse, you can write your ticket in America. I would recommend anyone who's male, female, especially
Okay.
men. Male nurses are so necessary right now because there's this whole, oh, we don't need men, women can do everything. But in our hospital, there's two very strong orderlies that have to do all the manual labor because the women literally can't, because we're lifting 400 pounds. We have
Wow.
routinely 2 to 300 kilo patients, and an 80 kilo woman is not going to be able to take care of that physical labor. And so we just lean constantly on strong, very muscular men to take care of these lifting jobs and all that. So that kind of person can absolutely write his ticket for any kind of job he wants, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. You might hurt your back. You might, there might be some economic conditions that lead to that not going as well as you think. So understanding risk and how important it is to be ready for a situation that is less than ideal, right? Having some monetary savings, having a way to protect your family, taking care of your body in such a way that you're reducing the likelihood of hurting your back, permanently disabling yourself, all these kinds of things. The likelihood of this happening is much higher than I think a lot of men realize. We're all kind of 15-year-old boys in
Hmm.
our heads thinking, I'll
Yeah.
always be fine. I'm
Yeah.
never going to be hurt. Everything's good. What I see every day in the hospital is motorcycle accidents. People getting taken out. Florida is the most dangerous state in America in terms of driving. We have horrific drivers. So every day, wonderful people are hit by cars, injured, bad things happening to them. So, but the most common one is just men who don't really take care of themselves physically, who have just common injuries over and over that we have to do surgery on, torn ligaments, damaged backs, knees that don't work anymore, very, very young men whose necks don't work anymore. So we're doing surgery, that kind of stuff. Don't ever take your health for granted, because it'll come at you quickly. You'll be fine one day, and then the next day, what's going on? Why is my neck, kind of thing. And so one of my greatest motivations now for exercise is not aesthetic in any nature. I'm not trying to be stronger, more muscular. I'm not doing curls for the girls. That's not what the motivation is at all. The motivation is I want to be able to run after my son. The moment that he's faster than me and he could run a mile faster than me and I can't keep up with him, I'm going to be so sad. But that day is not
Hmm.
today, and I'm going to continue to work to make sure. And my daughter, same thing, that I can keep up with them and be that athletic dad who can be silly and run after them. But the other thing is I want to be capable enough to where I'm not a burden on my family, and where my son wants to play, but I can't because I'm hurt, and I have to sit on the couch and recover because of something that I could have prevented. Injuries happen, bad stuff happens all the time through no fault of anyone's own, but you can absolutely reduce the risk and the likelihood of that bad thing happening if you train correctly, if you eat the right foods, if you're not drunk. That's a big one I see all the time is
Yeah.
friends, coworkers who something bad happens, and they weren't even drunk. They had they had a couple drinks, enough to where they weren't sharp, and then
Hmm.
a car accident happened, or an orthopedic injury happened, or something like that. And you never want to beat yourself up and take too much blame on that, but you can look at the situation and say, he absolutely could have prevented that bad thing from happening if he'd been a little bit sharper, but he allowed himself to be weak in that kind of situation. And we all have to relax. We all have to let loose, having a few drinks here and there. I certainly, enjoy alcohol every once in a while, but I don't think I will ever be truly drunk again. I can't imagine any
Hmm.
reason I would want to. And I would encourage any father, anyone who has children, anyone who someone relies on you, find what your limit is and learn to titrate to effect. When I give people anesthesia, I don't overdose them because I could kill them, right? If I give you too much anesthesia, you could absolutely die because of that. Think of alcohol the same way. It's a powerful intoxicant. And if you overdose yourself on it, you may hurt yourself or other people. Why put yourself in that situation? You can have a little bit, enjoy it, the flavor's good, and you're not, so weak that you're in a situation where you're incapacitated and bad things could happen. But if you're finding yourself as a father with the desire to get drunk at all regularly, that is something I highly recommend you change your behavior for. And you may not be an alcoholic, you may not be an addict, but you are putting yourself in a situation where you are at a greater risk of something bad happening to your family that you could have prevented, but you're not able to because of your actions.
No, that's well said, and I fully agree there. Like, it's you were saying earlier, we want to be protectors, and drinking can put you in a position where you're incapable of that. Like, we live very remotely in the country, and if my kids fall from a tree or something, God forbid, something terrible happens, I have to step up and make sure that I can take care of them in that situation. And an ambulance is 90 minutes away. I'm the ambulance, basically, and unless it's like, don't move them kind of scenario. So it's, I think it's really important to keep that in mind. But I know you take your health very seriously. And one of the things that you take with your health, or seriously with your health, is your sleep. Just to the point that you've got a very special bed. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and some of the other things that you've done to help enhance your sleep?
It's been amazing what a difference it's made for me. So I have there's a couple benefits to it. I have a bed that cools itself, and then when you wake up to heat and gentle vibration instead of
I didn't know it
an
went that
audio
far.
alarm.
Okay.
It's really nice,
Isn't
yeah,
that what a wife's
because
for?
right, yeah. If I sleep in, my wife will definitely put her cold feet on me, and that'll wake me right up. That works too.
Right.
Yeah, works every time. But so your body naturally works in 90-minute sleep cycles. So if you sleep for say 6 hours, 4 cycles, you will feel more rested than if you sleep for 6.5 or 7 hours and you wake up in the middle of a deep sleep. So we're
Hmm.
learning more and more about sleep science and how consistency is so much more important than total sleep volume. So if you drink alcohol, for example, not to harp on the alcohol thing again, it totally dysregulates your REM sleep, your rapid eye movement sleep, and you won't recover well at all. Your deep sleep is crushed. And so you can sleep for 10 hours and you won't feel rested at all after having quite a bit of alcohol. So by measuring and testing these different metrics about sleep, I've been able to improve my mood. My energy is much greater. I don't have to sleep as much to get the same benefits. And the biggest thing, you don't have to buy a fancy bed. You don't have to do any of that. If you wake up at the same time and go to sleep at the same time, your sleep will improve dramatically. So I didn't realize this until recently, but you're basically jet lagging yourself. So every time you wake up at 7 a.m. for work and then you sleep in till 10 a.m. on the weekend, and then you go back up, you have another work shift, you're waking up at 5 a.m., you're jet lagged for 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours, whatever it is, every time that you change that schedule. You stay up till 2 in the morning reading that book or playing that video game. And then, you go to bed at 10 o'clock the next day because you're exhausted. You're jet lagging yourself. It's like you got on a plane and went from Florida to New Zealand, you're going to feel terrible, right? It is the exact same when you go to sleep at a different time every night. And that was something, I mean, I started it in college. I would pull all nighters. I would have a crazy sleep schedule and I was really tired all the time. And I would get a lot of sleep. There were a lot of nights I would get 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep and wake up not feeling very rested. And I couldn't understand why. And it was a consistency issue. So sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time, get bright sunlight in your eyes as early as possible in the morning. So if you get up at 5 a.m., you have to wait, of course, until later in the day. But as soon as it turns light, go get 30 minutes. Don't stare directly at the sun, obviously. That was another thing. We talked about Isaac Newton earlier. Isaac Newton was such an empiricist that he actually stared directly at the sun for multiple minutes just to test to make sure that it is in fact bad for your vision. And he had permanent vision damage because of it. So he
Wow.
was so dedicated to science that he would said, no, I'm not going to trust other people. I'm going to stare at the sun for a couple minutes and it damages his eyes. Don't do that. Don't stare at the sun. Look slightly askance from the sun. So if the sun is right up here, I want to look kind of near it. So I'm getting a lot of bright sunlight directly in the eyes, and that will align your circadian rhythm better, really wake you up, put a lot of cortisol in your body, which you want in the morning, and then have it go away later in the day. You don't want high cortisol at night. You won't be able to sleep. It's a stress hormone, but we need
Mhm.
some stress in our life. And so high cortisol in the morning sets you up really well to have a great day. So bright sunlight, going to bed at the same time, avoid alcohol, especially at night. If you're going to drink, have a breakfast beer. Seriously, it sounds
Okay.
crazy, but Dr. Matthew Walker, who is the gold standard for sleep research, he wrote a book called Why We Sleep, and incredible researcher, but he made a very convincing case for having a breakfast beer if you're going to drink because your body has time to process it. And the harm from alcohol is not so much the the effects of the alcohol itself, it's the fragmentation that happens to your sleep. So the number one like destroyer of high quality sleep is alcohol. So if you're going to drink, do it in the morning, you know, have a day drink, and then give yourself time to metabolize it, burn it off, and then you'll sleep better at that point. So if there's one thing you can dial in, it's not your diet, it's not your exercise, it is your sleep. I've never met a depressed person who sleeps well. I've never met someone who had, you know, major psychological disorder who has great sleep. The two are so deeply interconnected. And I truly believe that one of the best ways that you can heal yourself from depression, from anxiety, you know, from all of these emotional and psychological maladies that we suffer from, especially in America, is to dial in our sleep and improve your sleep quality because emotional regulation is almost impossible when you're sleeping poorly. I know, you know, and you're in the throes of it right now. You just had a baby. Congratulations.
Thank
You
you.
know, it's very hard to sleep well when you have a baby that's getting up, you know, every couple of hours. And I'll bet you're a little bit on edge or a little, you know, it's not as easy. You're a very easygoing guy, but I'll bet it's a little bit tougher for you. And it will be, you know, for the next few months while you're dealing with the challenges of a baby that's, you know, up and down every night. So dial that sleep in and it will improve every part of your life.
No, I'm a big fan of trying to get the best sleep I possibly can, and it's obviously not always possible. But did you notice now that you've got your sleep so dialed in that you can feel a difference if anything's even just a little bit off?
Yes, I my willpower has improved dramatically. When I don't sleep well, I crave bad food all the time, and that's one of the first signs to me that I didn't sleep well. Is I want candy or chocolate or
Oh,
alcohol or
interesting.
something that I would crave more of. Yeah, yeah. So when I notice that I'm really struggling with willpower, that I'm not excited to go to work, that I don't really want to bring that energy with my kids, all these little things, I think, okay, how is my sleep? And very rarely will I sleep well and I don't want to I mean, just set the world on fire, excited to help people as much as possible, make the world a better place. I get up every morning and I do a little affirmation where um, I think about what I can do on a micro scale to make the world around me a little bit better. And that really excites me every morning to know, wow, I'm in a position, I'm in the prime of my life where not only do I want to help people, but I really can. And not a lot of people can. A lot of people are so busy dealing with their own demons, they can't help other people. They can't even help themselves, right? And so I'm I've been given that privilege to where not only can I help myself, and if I'm not doing well, I know how to ask for help, how to improve things to make things better for me. But then I'm also powerful enough to go help my family, to go volunteer, to go be incredible at work, to go talk to men online. And it's the most exciting, most motivating thing possible. And when it's not, when I wake up saying it's too early, it's cold, I want to go back to bed, screw this, I almost always didn't sleep well.
Well, that part makes sense at least, logically speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
So the other thing that you're a big proponent of, especially given your demanding career, is making sure that you have overall general well-being, and part of that is fitness. There's diet as well, but I know that you're big on fitness, especially lately. You lost 20 kilos, I think, in 6 months, which is very impressive. So how are you able to fit this health regime into your everyday life, given how busy you are? I mean,
I want to say I made six pretty concerted efforts to really dial in my nutrition and my exercise over the past couple of years. and I failed multiple times over and over. Uh, and so I think those failures were really important learning experiences for me because I always try when I fail at something, when I don't succeed, to learn from it. Otherwise, what was the point? What is it? You don't lose, you learn, right? Is the idea there. So from each of those, I had a challenge, and it was usually boredom in my case. I realized it came down to it's more interesting and fun to have that beer and eat that chocolate than it is for those long-term results that are going to happen a year down the road, right? So
Makes
it's so
sense.
much easier to get that short-term reward than it is to consistently over and over say no to that temptation for that long term. That's a future Dustin problem. I'm just going to eat the chocolate now and deal with the
Right.
consequences later,
Yeah.
right? So, what I found was that I needed to have short term rewards, and I had to gamify the system to the point that I was enjoying the process. Because if you enjoy the process, the results will come. But if all you care about is the results, and you don't dial in the process, you're
Mm,
never going to get those results. And so it doesn't matter whether it's academics, whether it's being a better husband and father, whether it's making more money, it's all about the results because the process is linear, right? The process is straightforward, but the results are exponential, right? So as the process stays the same, I'm eating the same foods over and over. Maybe my weight isn't changing, but then all of a sudden I'll lose 3 pounds and then I'll stay steady state for a couple of days and then I'll lose 3 pounds again. And so it's very frustrating. You weigh yourself every day and you say, well, why am I not losing weight consistently? I should lose a half a pound every day if I'm eating in a caloric deficit. It doesn't work
mm.
that way. It'll catch up
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
Investing is the same way, right? You'll have a year where you make nothing or you lose money, then another year, 3 years down the road, you've lost money. You're going, what is happening? What is the point of this investing? And then year four, you make 50%. It shoots up, right? And then another five
Hmm.
years of boredom, nothing happens, and then it goes up, right? And then so investing in your health is very similar to investing in your investment accounts in that it's totally asynchronous as to the effort doesn't seem to follow the results as clearly as we would like it. So it's a very hard thing for us as men who want instant results. When I do anesthesia, I give you medication, you're out in 5 seconds. I don't have to be patient. I don't have to wait. It's the most satisfying job in the world. Oh, you're not happy? You had a bad experience at the hospital? Good night. Go to sleep. It's a man. Like, I have the best job on the planet, right? Can you imagine if you were in customer service and you could just knock someone out at any time you want? It's the best thing ever. So I have that at work. I have that instant gratification. Blood pressure's low. I give you medication. It normalizes. Boom. We are totally impatient in anesthesia because we have to be. If your body's not doing well, I need to fix it ASAP, right? Totally different with health and fitness where I have to stick with that process over and over. And what I was finding was I really wanted the results, but I wasn't really enjoying the process. I love working out. I love getting stronger, doing kettlebells in particular. They're so much fun. I love swinging kettlebells. I love the physical challenges. But as you get older, that's not enough. When I was younger, I exercised so much. I had a faster metabolism. It is a little bit easier when you're a 20-year-old man. I ate like garbage all the time.
Hmm.
But I was young. I
Hmm.
exercised 4 hours a day. So I still had a great physique. I honestly probably wasn't that metabolically healthy, but I wasn't testing it. I didn't know. And, I had a bunch of acne and other kind of weird things that I shouldn't have had, but I was muscular and lean. And so it was fine, kind of thing. Whereas now I think as a 43-year-old man, I'm probably healthier than I was in my 20s from a metabolic perspective because I've improved my diet so much. So I sleep better. I think I'm less anxious. I had developed pretty bad acid reflux to the point that every day I was feeling acid coming up. And that's, all completely disappeared. I was snoring heavily. My wife, kept saying, oh, you're waking me up with snoring. That's all gone. I was starting to develop some pretty significant symptoms from having the extra weight. And so those have disappeared. But as far as the daily fun little things where I can say, okay, I'm going to stick with this. Um, I have a check-in with a trainer. So no matter how much knowledge you have, you should always have someone else. If you are a business development leader, you should have a business development coach. If you're a personal trainer, you absolutely need someone else to be accountable to who's a trainer. And so I was able to have those conversations with him back and forth every day, and we would tweak little things and talk about the workouts, talk about the diet, what went well, what didn't go well. That was really key for me. I got really into the analytics and the data and saw, okay, based on this, I lost this much weight, I gained this much weight. Looks like the amount of creatine I'm taking might be a little bit too little. Let me come up on that. That's going to help. Oh, the magnesium dose, I need to go up on that a little bit so I sleep better. All these little tweaks became this really fun game for me where I could really dial it in and do the best that I could for it. And so I got really into the process. And lo and behold, the results came very easily once I got the process down. But I absolutely think I did need to fail multiple times. One, because I needed to be humbled. For 10 years as a personal trainer before I got into medicine, I didn't have to work that hard. These guys would come to me and say, "Look, I'm 50 pounds overweight. Um, I don't have time to exercise, and it's really hard to eat well." And I would go, "You're just lazy. You're ridiculous. This is crazy." And now I'm hearing the voice of these men talking to me, and I go, "Oh, I get it. It is really hard. It is
Mm.
really, really
Hmm.
hard as a man in America who has a sedentary job to be healthy. You really have to be kind of a weird guy." I'm constantly getting up, stretching, doing squats, wall sits. When I have breaks in between cases, I'm running up and down stairs. I'm taking walks everywhere, you know, and people say you're crazy, but they're also saying, "Wow, you're doing really great. You look awesome." And that's really nice feedback too, is hearing from people, seeing those results. That makes it a lot easier to stick with it. So, to answer your question, dial in the process and make sure that you have little landmarks and little check-ins that are going to give you that same dopamine hit and that same satisfaction that having the craving would. The other thing that I do is when I say no to a craving, I look at that as a huge win and I get a huge amount of satisfaction saying, last year, Dustin would have had that piece of cake, because hospitals are notorious. It's full of donuts and cake and just the worst stuff imaginable always. So I'm every day having to walk past these temptations. And every time that I'm able to say no to that, I know that my new identity is someone who doesn't eat that stuff regularly, that that's a treat for me, not a regular everyday mainstay. And so I've changed my identity, and I feel like a video game character, literally like Mario, jumping over like Goombas, getting away from this food,
Yeah.
and it's that's a really satisfying part to it too. So gamification and having those little steps over and over has really been key for me.
Do you find that it's the same in your career? Like, have you had to gamify things in order to become the high achiever that you are now?
That's different for a number of reasons. Doing things to help myself has never been the most exciting for me, knowing that I've gotten more money or that I've, made things better. But when I know that I'm helping other people and that I'm able to make their life better, it's so easy to stay motivated. I can stay awake for 20 hours straight if I have to, taking care of a cancer patient very sick, who needs a major surgery, because I'm the only person there who's going to be their advocate and make sure that they're warm enough, that their blood pressure is good, that all these little things that need to happen. And so it's so action oriented. I'm constantly busy. um, a lot of times for a spine surgery, the patient is flipped on their belly, and if the eyes have any pressure on them at all, it can lead to blindness. So we have to constantly be super careful, checking
Wow.
to make sure that the padding, yeah, because there's too much pressure on the eyes, that can damage the ocular nerve, and it happens unfortunately, once or twice a year. In surgery, people will lose their vision for something unrelated to their eyes. It'll be a spine surgery or something, because someone wasn't careful enough. So I'm very excited about making sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure something bad doesn't happen to this person, that they have the best experience possible. So, in that sense, in my job, now the other thing is I have students. I would say 60% of the time, an anesthesia student will be with me, and so I'm not only doing the work myself, but I'm also allowing them to do some of the work. And so we're collaborating and constantly talking to each other, using new AI systems to figure out the best way. Arguing, they'll say, "Oh, I was taught at school that it's this way," and I'll say, "No, I think it's this way." And then we'll bring our attending and they'll talk, and then all three of us have a different opinion, and it's really fun, right? So we're all doing our best to optimize the experience for the patient, and so it's very easy to stay motivated in that kind of situation. I would say one of my greatest joys in my career is that medicine has such a strong culture of passing on information to the next generation. I essentially got a 3-year long apprenticeship. There was some academic work. We had to hit the books, obviously, but the majority of the work was me working as an apprentice under a master anesthesia provider, which is basically an alchemist, right? And an anesthetist is basically like this alchemist poisoner, right? I mean, we're literally giving people poison gases to put them. Oh yes, here's the poison gas. Breathe it in. I mean, it's like what we do is crazy. And then the person is just like out, and I'm like, "Are you really asleep?" I'm not really sure. It feels like magic, and I'm the one doing it. It's an incredible experience. So it's so fun. I'm passing on my bad habits to the next generation, right, of anesthesia providers. I get to be a mentor, and that kind of stuff makes me all tingly inside. I love knowing that I'm the next link in the chain of that night's watch, right? Of incredible people who are there to take the best possible care of patients.
It's rare that you hear somebody have so much fun with their career because most people, unfortunately, don't enjoy what they do. So it's quite nice to hear somebody that actually enjoys their line of work. But do you ever feel like you're at the mercy of your employer at all?
Yes, that's one of the hardest things, for sure. Is I don't have a consistent schedule. I envy guys who either work from home and can create their own schedule, or guys who truly have a 9 to 5. They work at a bank. The bank closes at 4:30. They'll be home by 5 o'clock. I envy those
Mm.
guys because they can tell their wife, "Hey, yeah, I'll be home at 5." I can't. I can say this surgery might take an hour, but it might take two. I think I'll be finished, by 7, but it might be 8 o'clock. I might miss baseball practice tonight. And that's why it's so important to me to have days off so that I can protect my time, because my time is not mine when I'm in the hospital, whether I'm on call or whether, you have a shift where you roughly work 12 hours, but sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 14. And that going into it. This is a practice and a career. It's not a job, so it's a
Mm.
privilege. There's only so many of us. There's only a few thousand of us trained in this very special anesthesia program. And so I know going into it that it is a privilege that I get to do this, but I don't necessarily have control over my time. And one of the most important things that money can do for you is give you control over your time. Right. And so no amount of money in the world, unless I quit my job, truly gives me control over my time until I retire. And so that is the most frustrating aspect to it, I think, especially when I know that, it could have gone quickly and that was it. But then some complexity happens, or maybe the surgeon's not quite as good as they should be. So they're taking 2 extra hours, or all these random little things happen. And I do my best to cultivate gratitude. And again, say, I love my job. It's great that I get to do what I do. But there are definitely days where I say, oh, I got the slow surgeon, and that means I'm stuck here 3 extra hours.
Oh no.
And I am
Yeah.
not grateful right now. I am not feeling patient. Oh, so I definitely have those days. Not every day is a great day. And the personalities are tough. Politicians and surgeons have the highest levels of psychopathy of any profession. So,
Wow.
you're
Okay.
managing. You need a little bit of a psychopath though to be literally. I'm handing you a scalpel and you get to slice someone open and cut their ear off,
I
or
suppose that makes sense. It's not reassuring at all, though.
disembowel them, whatever it is. And it is, of course, for the goal of healing, right? I mean, that is what they
Yes,
do is
yes.
incredible. They're healers, but they also have some tendencies towards a little bit of psychopathy. And
Yeah.
a little bit of psychopathy is not a bad thing. Elon Musk is a total psychopath, right? He is 100% psycho, but we wouldn't have like rockets and Neuralink and all this cool stuff without that there. And I think a lot of surgeons would not put in the 100-hour weeks and become these incredibly gifted healers without that little bit of crazy, right? So my job then not only is to take care of this patient and all that, but also to manage the surgeon's ego and personality and all that kind of stuff. And that's not
Mm.
always the easiest thing.
Wow.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I don't want to be dealing with that, but it's just part of the job. And maybe they think they're managing my crazy personality too. I'm sure there's some of that going on as well.
You're an emotional anesthetist as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, in saying that, then, would you take double the pay for 150% of the hours?
So it's very funny that you ask that, because that is the Faustian bargain that we are offered so commonly. And it is the reason that so many people in medicine, I think, do struggle with family time. We have this incredible opportunity if we want it. And I took it often um, when I was younger, because I had $250,000 in student loans to pay off when I graduated. School is incredibly expensive in America, and that's
That's a lot.
relatively
Yeah.
cheap. It was only a 3-year program. For surgeons, routinely they have $1 million in loans when they
Wow.
graduate, and then they might have to buy
Wow.
into a
Okay.
practice, take out loans for another million to be part of a surgical practice. So they've got to work their butts off to get out from under these debts, as quickly as they can. So uh, the the deal that's offered to many medical providers is um, sometimes 150%, sometimes even 200%. There were times that we had bonuses like, we'll pay you 3 times your normal hourly rate if you're able to work this extra shift, essentially. who would say no to that, right? I mean, especially growing up poor with a single mom, you're going to offer me 3 times my pay, to work one
Mm,
shift.
mm.
I'm in, let me get more hours, sign me up. There were even times that I paid some of my coworkers to take, because they were offered that shift. And I said, look, I'll give you X amount of money just so I can take your shift and then work it. And they said, that's crazy. Yeah, it's all yours. So I loved, very satisfying to know that I could take that bargain. But now it's the opposite because my time with my family is so important. And I've worked hard to pay off my debts, be in a better financial position so I don't have to do that. But it's still very hard for me to say no when I know, wow, I could make a very large amount of money just working, a couple shifts, no big deal, right? But it's absolutely enough to create a situation where there's resentment with my wife because now she's taking on the complete burden, of the children, 80% of it. Whereas now I would say 30 to 40% of the childcare burden, which I happily do. It makes me very proud that I'm able to do that. I wish more men recognize how important it is to have a male role model relationship, everything that a father provides. There's just no replacing that. And so if you have the choice as a man of buying a nicer car and going on a nicer vacation, or spending more time with your kids and being present with them, you've got to make the right choice there and drive the old beater car like I do, and spend more time with the kids and go be that present father for them. So you asked, and again, seasons of life. For I would say the first 5 years that I practiced anesthesia, I took that offer as often as I could. I paid off my loans, put myself in a good financial position, set my wife and myself up so that, if something were to happen, we have an emergency fund and, we're protected in that sense. But now, no, I won't take that deal anymore.
Oh, but I think it's a perfectly fair thing to say. Now we're actually a little over time now, so I want to be respectful of the time that you have because I know that you value it so highly with your family. So one last question for you here: what's the greatest compliment your son or daughter could pay you when they're your age?
It wouldn't be a compliment. It would be behaving in such a way that it was very obvious that they were leading their lives in a successful, positive way, helping other people because of what I did. That they could hear my voice in their head telling them, this is the easy path. This is what a lot of other people are going to do. That's not the path you want. Here's why. And they choose the hard path and they get to that success and they did it because of me, not because I put them in a good school, not because of some other person, but directly because of my being there in their life. That would be the highest compliment to me, and I'll know it when it happens.
A daddy Dustin Angel on their shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well said, Dustin, and I want to thank you for coming on the show today, as I really appreciate your time and all the insights you've shared with us.
Ben, this has been an absolute pleasure. You've asked great questions, and it's so much fun chatting with you. You're someone who knows how to ask great questions, but also has great answers. We've interviewed you before, and it's fun to be on the other side of it. This is really cool, being able to come full circle like this.
I'm happy to accommodate Dustin. Dustin was a really great guest. I really enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun. He has that podcast that he does as well with some awesome guys. I highly suggest you go and check that out. I'm going to leave a link in the description as well as the episode that I was on down in the description. Now, if you want to learn more about fatherhood and homeschooling them so you can build a strong culture within your family, then you should check out the episode that I did with Robert Bortons, who's the CEO of Classical Conversations. I'll leave it on the screen here or down in the description for people listening. And if you want to get more into the longevity side so you can live longer and lead your family for longer, I have a full episode with Julie Gibson Clark right here. She was the number 2 in the world for reducing her rate of aging. So it was a really great episode that I did with her. A like and subscribe is incredibly appreciated and helps you bring more world-class guests to you. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.